This survivor team, no matter which path they take, gets intercepted each time.
But then we can start moving forward on business.
Bitch nuts.
We making our stand?
All right, go slow.
Get back to the RV! Go!
Rick. Go back.
This is already their fourth change of direction. Next, they stop the car and discuss their countermeasures. Maggie's condition was critical.
You're gonna be okay. The baby's gonna be okay. This isn't it. This isn't it. There's more. There's gonna be more.
I believe in you, Rick.
And they urgently needed a doctor. Now, there are only two possible roads to take, but they might also encounter interception again. At this moment, Eugene spoke up, saying that the interceptors always seem to appear ahead or behind them. But have you ever considered that they are waiting for this beat-up car? When the time comes, one person will drive the car while others quietly leave on foot. Moreover, it's getting dark soon, making it less likely to be noticed. The rest of the team nodded in agreement, so they waited until nightfall. This time, Eugene took the initiative to drive, willing to play along with their game. Afterward, Eugene handed a blueprint to Rick, detailing how to produce bullets. He was afraid he wouldn't survive. Abraham came over and cautioned Eugene, "Go easy on the gas pedal. Don't drive too fast." Abraham, being a tough guy, couldn't express his emotions in a sentimental way.
How come you never let me drive the truck?
I didn't think you could do it. I was wrong. You're a survivor. You always were. We just didn't know it.
So he expressed his concern for Eugene in this manner. Acknowledging Eugene as a qualified survivor, Eugene didn't shake hands but hugged his old friend directly. Then Eugene drove ahead, while Rick and the others carried Maggie on a stretcher, heading towards the hilltop. This was also Eugene's brave third time for the sake of the team. Rick's team didn't dare to delay, taking turns carrying the stretcher, thinking the plan would be seamless. But as they walked, whistling sounds came from the woods, and people were moving all around in the darkness. Rick knew for sure that someone was looking for them, so they had to quickly carry the stretcher and move forward. Little did they know that everything was already planned by these people, and they had walked right into the trap. Carefully looking around, Eugene's car also appeared there, and the feeling of being manipulated was unsettling. Rick's group was now in a desperate situation. Their guns seemed powerless, and beads of sweat covered each of their faces. They were like fish on a chopping block, helpless and vulnerable. The group of people just stood there, neither moving nor speaking, creating an eerie and terrifying atmosphere. It was only then that Rick's team noticed Eugene had already been caught and had clearly been beaten up. At that moment, the leader stepped forward, speaking words of welcome, but then demanded they surrender their weapons. Rick was genuinely afraid, his voice trembling. Several burly men then stepped forward to take away Team Riker's weapons. It was something they couldn't resist. The leader, named Simon, ordered Rick's team to place the woman from the stretcher on the ground and kneel in line. Under the circumstances, Rick's team had no choice but to comply. Maybe there was still a slim chance through negotiation. Rick felt powerless like never before, his face showing a mix of fear and confusion, as if tonight could be their end. It was then that Dwight emerged, bringing with him his spoils Michonne and the other three. Daryl wasn't dead, just severely injured, and they were also made to kneel. Glenn lifted his head and saw his wife. Simon shouts out, "Your team's all here, now meet the boss of the Saviors." Shortly after, Simon knocked on the door of the RV, and it creaked open. A tall man carrying a baseball bat over his shoulder emerged. It was none other than Negan, the leader of the Saviors. Contrary to expectations, Negan had a smile on his face and asked if Rick's team had wet their trousers, and even if they hadn't, then they were close to it. Approaching them, Negan asked once more, "Who's the asshole in charge of you guys?" Simon pointed at Rick's head, indicating it was him. Negan walked up to Rick and calmly said, "So, you're Rick. Ha, you've killed many of my men, and I'm not too thrilled about that. I sent another group to avenge them. And you killed them all too. That's really unkind. He mentioned that the group he sent was encountered by Carol and met their demise on the road. Rick could only tremble as he looked up at Negan. Negan is always all smiles and the dimples on his face make him look very handsome. Negan addressed Rick, saying that the ceremony today was his way of introducing himself and showing what he could do. He stated that from now on, they would all work for him, and anything they acquired must be surrendered to him. That was their new mission. He acknowledged that it might be difficult to accept initially, but they would eventually come around. Rick, you've dominated and built safe neighborhoods. Do you think you're safe? I can understand that, but a new world order has been created and the truth is you are not safe. You're even fucked. Negan warned that not following his orders would make their situation even worse. He demanded half of the community's resources, and the definition of half would be determined by the saviors. If they couldn't give enough, they should scavenge, produce, or even steal to make up for it. They were now under the saviors' control, and the more they resisted, the harder it would be for them. Negan announced that his men would visit their community weekly to collect their share, and they must welcome them openly. If they failed to provide, they would lose some of their people. Negan emphasized that he didn't want to kill Rick's people, as then who would work for him? He didn't want to tend to a vegetable garden himself. But Rick, you've killed my men, a lot of them, more than I can take. He went on to introduce his weapon, named Lucille, specifically designed for bashing people's heads in. Then Negan hovered in front of Rick's team, preparing to choose someone to make an example of. Despite enduring so much hardship, the tension was suffocating. Abraham, being the tough guy that he was, remained as proud as ever. He defiantly looked up at Negan, holding his head high, showing no signs of weakness. However, Negan simply made a sarcastic remark about Abraham's beard and didn't pay him further attention. Negan continued pacing in front of them until he stood in front of Carl. He still had a smile on his face as he playfully told Carl to relax a little and maybe shed a tear or two, at least. Fortunately, Negan didn't select Carl to act upon and continued walking, until they stopped in front of Maggie and said,
You look shitty. Let's just put you out of your misery right now.
No! Stop it!
Nope, get him back in line.
No. Don't.
All right, listen. Don't any of you do that again. I will shut that shit down, no exceptions. First one's free. It's an emotional moment. I get it. Sucks, don't it? Moment you realize you don't know shit. It's your kid, right? This is definitely your kid.
So stop this!
Hey! Do not make me kill the little future serial killer. Don't make it easy on me. I gotta pick somebody. Everybody's at the table waiting for me to order. I simply cannot decide. I got an idea.
Negan looked at them playfully and thought it was just too hard to choose. He suddenly had a new way to play the game, that is to point the generals. Whoever you point at the end will die. This method is very fair. As Negan pointed his baseball bat at each person, their hearts skipped a beat, imagining the image of themselves getting their heads bashed in. Finally, Negan finished making his selection.
Told me to pick.
To prevent anyone from getting emotional and acting out, he threatened that if anyone dared to move or speak, he would dig out Carl's other eye and make his father eat it.